Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Season and Surf Vlog. My name is Melissa and we are outside in my garden today, which means we are doing a gardening video. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I harvest all the remaining vegetables in my garden, as well as show you how to do a very fun fall planting task, which is planting garlic. Now garlic is amazing to grow. I've grown garlic for many years, but I haven't grown garlic in our new garden at our new house this year. So we're going to be doing that for the first time, and I'll walk you through the steps on how to grow really great garlic. I live just outside of Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada, and I'm in zone 8B. And even though I am in a very warm climate or growing zone, it is definitely getting colder. It is freezing at night. The temperature for next week, I looked at the nightly low, it's going to go down to like 4 degrees Celsius where I live, which is crazy. I can't believe it's getting that cold, but that means we got to get everything out of the garden and all of our crops planted so we're ready to go. So if you want to see how I harvest the rest of my garden produce and how I plant my garlic, just keep on watching. Alright, so we'll start off the video by harvesting our peppers, and this is what Pearl's pepper patch is looking like. We had such a good pepper year. The plants not only are huge, but there are so many peppers on it. Here is my Scotch bonnet pepper. I was really nervous about this plant because I actually snapped the top off of it when I was growing it from seed, but obviously, as you can see, it did a great job in the end. So some of the older peppers on this plant are red and the younger ones are green. I'm going to go ahead and harvest them all just because it's going to be too cold to keep them outside any longer. After harvesting the Scotch bonnets, I also harvested the rest of my jalapenos, and then I moved on to my ghost pepper plant. And it's at this point that I thought it might be a good idea to actually wear gloves because the ghost peppers are very spicy. So I put my gloves on and I plucked off all the ghost peppers from my plant. I also harvested some poblanos that were still out here and the rest of my jalapenos as well from my second jalapeno plant. So adding all of these to the basket was really satisfying. I know it looks kind of weird having green peppers, but they will ripen up in no time. I also harvested the rest of my pepperoncinis as well. I was actually surprised at how much there was. I did not think that there was that many on one plant. But this is what my pepper harvest looks like. This is probably the second harvest that I got with this amount from all of my plants, so I am very proud of the peppers and Pearl's pepper patch this year. She must have done some magic to make us get all these amazing peppers. Next up, we're moving over to my trellis and I'm going to harvest my butternut squash. So far, I only have one butternut squash that actually ripened up, and I guess I'm proud of it. I don't know, I got one. Normally I get a lot more, but I am holding on hope because I did plant a second vine on the other side of my trellis and it is growing some baby butternut squash. They are still pretty small right now, and even though the temperature is going to drop, I'm going to leave them and just see if they ripen. I feel like there's no harm in doing that because they're still green and the leaves are also bright green and not wilting yet. Next up, we'll move on to harvesting our tomatoes before we take down the tomato plants because the tomato plants are just looking sad. As bad as it is to see them go, they are not looking good, so we have to remove them from the garden. So I'm going to go through and pick all of my cherry tomatoes, and I'm going to take away all the ones that have split open like this. These are perfectly fine to eat, so you can eat them if you want, but I'll harvest everything else, including the yellow and green ones. At this time of year when the temperature does drop, it does affect the texture and flavor of the tomatoes, so it's actually better if you do harvest them at this point when they're still green. And to get green tomatoes like this to ripen, all you have to do is bring them inside, space them out, and put them on a countertop or a nice windowsill where it can get some indirect light, and they will ripen in no time. And after going through the vines and harvesting all the leftover cherry tomatoes that were good, this is how much I got just for the loose ones. And this is the amount of green tomatoes that were still on the vine. So we have a huge mountain of tomatoes, and we're gonna have tomatoes for at least a couple more weeks here. Now that all the good tomatoes have been removed, it's time to take out the vines. So I'm going through and removing all the twist ties that I used to tie up my plants over the season. And I do like to save these from season to season, especially the rubber and the spongy ones, because they are really good for your plants and you can reuse them, which is great. And now it's time to take down the vines. So when I do this, I just grab 1 liter from the tomato and just start cutting pieces off of it. I do cut small pieces just so they can fit in my compost bucket so I can take it down to the compost in our garage. And unfortunately, due to our strata rules for our townhouse complex, we can't actually have a compost in our backyard, which sucks because compost is amazing. So we just put it in the city municipal compost, which I guess is good, but I wish we could keep this for ourselves. As you can see, some of my plants were really tall. I think the tallest one we got this year was 9 feet, which is insane. And this one actually grew back into a shrub that we have, and it was all intertwined. It was in our neighbor's backyard. It was crazy. We never had a tomato plant grow this big before or this wild, so we had a very, very good year for our tomatoes. Now I think the best tool for removing tomato vines has to be the Felco pruner. I have the Felco number 2, which is a classic pruner, and the blades are just so good. They're so sharp, and they do stay sharp for a long time before you have to maintain them. But I always make sure after I'm done using them, no matter where they are, in the dirt like they are now, or if they're cutting plants, I always make sure to clean them just so that they can stay sharp and pristine for longer. And as you can see, as I go through and remove all the plants, I also remove the stakes. I just store these outside in a covered area along with the tomato cages as well. Now we're down to the final steps. All we have to do is remove the stems and the roots from the ground. I never leave these sticking out or anything because they are hard and they won't actually break down. I always think it's really cool to see the roots and the whole system that the plant grows, and some of the root systems were huge, just like this one. This is my sun gold tomato, and this one had the biggest root system. And the final step of clearing the tomato vines is to also clear out all the tomatoes that have fallen into your garden. If you leave these, they will break down and the seeds will actually grow for next year, especially if you bought good tomatoes, which obviously you always should. So I take out every single tomato from the garden and put it in the compost. And next I'm just going to do the same thing for all of our pepper plants. And I had to be really careful when pulling out the roots of the pepper plants not to disturb some beans that I have growing in these containers as well. Some of them did definitely get ruined, but I think I saved most of them, and we have little beans that are growing, which is super cool. Hurly, what happened to your pepper patch? Oh, it's all done for the year, honey. We start again soon, don't worry. And the last step of clearing my garden was just to remove that butternut squash vine that I harvested my squash from earlier. I just took this off the trellis and left the other vine growing on the other side. And after that was cleared, this is what the garden was looking like. Really sad not seeing the tomatoes and the peppers anymore, but this is just simply a part of gardening, and this happens every year. Now, even in October, there are still some plants, especially on the other side of my garden here. I do have my rose bush still growing. I think I'm going to leave this for another couple weeks before at least trimming it back a bit. And I also planted some kale. I planted this back in September, and the kale is still pretty small, which is to be expected, especially with all the cold weather, but it is looking so good. And I also wanted to mention that I did pick up this kale from my local garden center. It was a variety pack of lacinato kale, green kale, and then purple kale as well. You don't have to start everything from seed, especially in the fall after a long growing season. Going to your garden center and buying some seed starts is perfectly fine. I also have Super Bina Sparkling Amethyst from Proven Winners, and this is doing amazing still. I'm just going to leave this until it completely dies back. Same thing with the pansies. These self-seeded from the spring and they're growing again, which is so cute. I'm also going to leave up my amaranth plant because it is looking so beautiful, and I don't harvest it for the actual grains. I just do it for looks basically. And this variety is called Hot Biscuits. It's my favorite. It is so pretty and perfect for fall. I'm also leaving up my zinnia. Even though it is really small, it did produce some flowers, and I think this is the Cinderella purple. It is really pretty, even though it does look more pink. I love it. All right, now that everything is harvested, it looks super bare and I'm so sad, but we are gonna get our garlic going, so we are ready for next year. So I'll show you the garlic that I picked out for this year. This is red Russian garlic from West Coast Seeds. And I've grown garlic from West Coast Seeds for quite a few years actually, and I've always had really good success. So when you order your garlic, it'll actually come just like how it comes in the grocery store. So this is what the red Russian garlic looks like. It comes in a pack of 3 and it has a really nice purple skin. And this is a hard neck garlic, meaning that it has a nice hard center and it'll produce a scape. And I love planting this variety because I love getting the scapes in the late spring. They taste so good. So I love doing the hard neck variety, but if you like a soft neck, you can also do that as well. You just won't have the scape. So now for me, I don't think I have enough space to plant all 3 of these in my garden, so I am going to pick the 2 biggest ones. You want to look for ones that have a really nice skin, really big cloves, because when you plant a bulb that looks really good, all the little cloves that grow from it will also look like this as well. So you want to make sure you're growing the best ones. So for me, I think I'm going to pick these 2, and I might actually just use this for like garlic in the kitchen or something. So it's not going to go to waste. Now, when you plant garlic, you don't plant the whole bulb like this in the ground. You actually want to break it apart, just like if you're cooking. So you want to take it and just kind of break. Oh my gosh, it's hard. Oh, come on. You want to just break the cloves off like you're cooking. There we go. Oh my gosh. And use all your strength to break the cloves off, and you'll see just like this. And you want to plant the garlic with this little root end down and this pointy part up, and leave the skin on because that actually protects the clove and helps it grow. So what I'm going to do is take the rest of the garlic, break all the little cloves off, and then I'll show you where I'm going to plant them. All right, so in the end, I actually used the 3rd bulb because the cloves are absolutely massive. So I have 19 huge cloves here, and I'm gonna basically do 10 on one side and 9 on another side. And I'm gonna be planting them a little bit in from the edge of my garden bed because I wanna save this for tulips, which I will be planting very shortly in my next garden video. But I am gonna just plant them in, and I'm gonna show you how I space everything out. Ideally, you would want the cloves to be about 6 inches apart, like this way and this way, but I find you can actually get it away with probably like 4-inch spacing. But obviously the more you space them out, the more room they have to grow and the bigger they will get. But we're gonna do around 4-5-inch spacing. So I'm gonna get everything placed out and I'll show you how to plant them. All right, so I have all my garlic spaced out here and it's looking good. I think we have lots of space and we'll have plenty of space in the spring for some spring vegetables here. But once you have everything spaced out, you want to plant them, and you want to plant them about 3 to 4 inches deep. So what I like to do is I just dig a hole with my hands and then pop it right down. Again, root side down, pointy part up, and then just cover it up. And that's all you have to do to plant garlic. It is super easy, and you just basically leave this until the spring. And you'll see in the spring, you'll start to send up little garlic shoots, and they will look so cute and beautiful. I would also suggest that if you live in a really cold climate, to actually mulch the garlic in about 2 inches deep at least. And this will kind of help protect the garlic and keep it warm over winter, especially in those super cold areas. And even though I live in Vancouver, which is super mild compared to the rest of Canada, I will be putting mulch on top of this. I mulch my garden at the end of every season just to add more nutrients back into the soil and have some like compost material basically. So I will be doing that afterwards, probably another day, because the mulch is way under our house and I don't want to crawl in there to get it out. So we'll leave the mulching to another day, but let's get to planting. This is the other side of my garden where I'm going to be planting the rest of the 9 cloves of garlic that I have. And over here, I actually wanted to tell you a little bit about siting your garlic, or like areas for where you want to plant. Ideally, you want to plant your garlic in an area that gets at least 6 hours of sun a day. Now, on this side of the garlic bed, it definitely does not get that. So I expect to have smaller cloves of garlic compared to the other side where I just planted the other garlic cloves. But that's okay, because in my mind, I have to have everything symmetrical in this garden or else I go crazy. So even though I know they're not going to grow as well on this side, I'm still going to plant them, and you never know, they might still just work. So let me get the rest of these 9 cloves planted. What are you doing? What are you doing? Hi. Look at this little scamper. What are you doing? Pearl, why are you trying to escape? Don't you like it here? Oh! Okay, you be good, okay? What did you see? Did you see a cat? She's always on patrol. Always gotta be on patrol. Oh, also, I haven't shown you this, but I got Garden Answers kneeling mat. This is honestly the best kneeling mat ever. It is so good. I like that it has a plastic coating on it, because if you have the foam ones, I find that after a couple of years the foam disintegrates and like it gets everywhere. But this, I don't think it's going to happen to this because of the plastic coating on it, and it is so thick and so soft. I love this. If you haven't got this yet, you need to go buy it. Thing I was going to mention is if you have really poor garden soil, or it's really like dense with clay, you want to add some compost, and if it's very clayey, add some sand to it, because this way it'll kind of help break up the soil and let your garlic grow. This soil that I have in my garden is brand new. I just got it this year and everything grew so well. I'm not going to fertilize or anything like that, and I think the garlic will still be fine. So yeah, that's another tip. And if you have squirrels, this also goes for tulip bulbs and daffodil bulbs and everything too. Squirrels just love to dig up gardens and ruin all the bulb planting that you did. It's really unfortunate, but if you do have that problem, sprinkle the area with a bit of blood meal. You can get that in garden centers or at like hardware stores. They have it basically. And what it is, it's basically dried blood, which is kind of gross, but it is really good for your garden and it deters pests like squirrels and even deer. So that's a good tip if you don't want your garden to get messed up over winter, especially with pests like squirrels or deer or things like that. So luckily we live in a townhouse now and we don't deal with any of that. So we're good. So all the garlic has been planted is in a small area on this side, as well as over here. You can see on this side I drew 2 little lines in here just so we know where the garlic is planted for when I plant my tulip bulbs. But essentially all the tulip bulbs will go around the edges of the garden bed, and I can't wait to show you the tulips that I got. That'll be in my next garden video, but it's going to be so pretty in here in the spring. And that's it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed watching me take down all of my plants from the summer in our garden and get the garden ready for fall. I hope that the garlic planting tips will help you out. And if you haven't planted your garlic yet, you definitely still have some time. But if you are in a very cold climate, make sure to get that in the ground before the ground freezes. So do it ASAP if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you want to see more gardening videos and see how I garden in my townhouse garden here in Vancouver, British Columbia, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I will be posting a tulip planting video in the next few weeks, so you'll be able to see how I do that. I'll also be doing some winter gardening videos and planting videos throughout the winter time as well. And before we know it, it's going to be spring. So the next garden season will be here before we know it. Also, if you want to find some delicious local and seasonal recipes, make sure you check out my Instagram, TikTok, and my blog. And I will leave those links in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to enjoy the best of the season every day. Bye!